All right, and so definitely, because of how much good information is in this chapter, hopefully everybody's kind of prepared to take notes and jot down, some of the thoughts that you have, as well as what other people share. And again, like we'll try to keep comments to maybe 1 to 2 minutes if possible, just because there's a lot of info to get through. So we will go ahead and get going. So this chapter with the law of supply, one of the things that that Belinda had jotted down that I thought was really interesting was the scripture of Matthew 7:7. And glasses on here. I just want to kind of open with this because I think it's going to be a really good foundation for us to kind of work through the rest of the chapter. And so Matthew 7:7 reads, and this is from the New International Version: "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you." So, this idea at the very beginning of the chapter about man is never satisfied. This fact is deplored by many, but God did not intend that man should be forever satisfied. And so we're going to kind of talk through this chapter as far as, what types of things in our lives should we be asking for? And this law of supply basically tells us that anything that's out there that is for our good, as long as it lines up with the will of God, is available to us. So there is no limit. Really, it's up to us to kind of design and be clear about what those things are that we desire in our lives. And I thought it was interesting as I was reading just like when I Googled this verse, I went to a website. It's called BibleHub.com, but it actually shows a bunch of different versions of the Bible and how the wording differs a little bit. And I thought it was kind of funny. The New Living Translation, which is, typically a lot looser than, King James or other versions, it says, "Keep on asking," instead of the, "ask and it will be given," or "seek and you shall find." It says, "Keep on asking and you will receive what you ask for. Keep on seeking and you will find. Keep on knocking and the door will be open to you." So I thought that was kind of cool about kind of that repetition, that it's not just ask once, it's like keep on asking, keep on seeking, but it's just kind of a constant instruction for us to do. So with that, let's go ahead and get into, right at the beginning of this chapter 3, again, you guys, I'm going to have to kind of go back and forth between books because the version that I have is not the one that has the, it's not the one that I think some of you guys are reading from. But one of the things that we talked about was what comes first, believing or seeing. And so that was, kind of one of the main topics that comes up right away, is that, again, I can't give the page numbers on that with you guys, but at the bottom of it would be like the first page of the chapter. Cindy, you have it.
I'm with this book. Who has this book? And everybody has this one?
Yes.
Chris, you have this one?
Kathleen? Okay.
Okay.
Let me switch to that one, because I've got my notes in mind, but I can just kind of do both of them.
Page 43.
Okay, so, it talks about God as being the supply for everything, how God is the source. And what comes first, believing or seeing? Is it that, we actually believe something and then we see it? Or does it take, for us to be able to see something and then believe it? So, Cindy, what's your take on this topic here about, which one comes first?
Well, I think that there's a lot of talk in here about seeing versus believing, but I think if we look at it from the opposite way, one of the good points that Belinda had is believing, it's hard for us to believe in something unless we see it, right? Like we're just kind of, it's ingrained in us to see something and then believe. But if we can just teach ourselves to start really visualizing and believing, then eventually we will see it manifest itself in our lives.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think, without making it a Bible study, it does remind me of, there's a scripture in Hebrews, I think it may be Hebrews 11, that talks about, that's exactly what faith is. So faith is the, it's things that we can't see. It's the evidence of something that we can't actually see. There's nothing to prove it. There's no science behind it. It's something that, we have to walk by faith and not by sight, is kind of, what the point is. So, we kind of move forward with this idea of the law of supply us, exactly like that we can have anything. Anything that's for our good is there. It's available for us. And but again, it's hard for us to grasp that, I think, sometimes, that if it's not something that we have evidence of, not something that we can see, then it's hard to imagine that still exists. So does anybody have any comments on just kind of this idea of believe, which one comes first, like being able to see something to believe it, or vice versa? Did anything stick out to you as you were reading?
Well, I know one of the things that I read here that Belinda had sent me on this, which I think is very important for us. All of us are trying to build an Isagenix business, I believe, and we can relate this in other areas of our lives as well, in our jobs. But if we can start teaching others and ourselves to visualize these things, as we say, like, what do you want your goal weight to be? What do you see? What are you wearing when you reach that goal? What are you doing and feeling? What are you sensing? Are you laughing? Where are you? And these are the things that may not be happening in our lives right now, but if we follow our system, our program, then we're gonna actually lose the weight. We're gonna be able to wear different clothes. We're gonna be able to hike up that mountain. It can help us help others grow their businesses as well, if we can teach them to believe before they actually see.
Yeah, great point. So and I want to move now down to the bottom of page 45. So the paragraph that starts with, because some people, everybody's there. It tells us, because some people do not see an abundance around them and do not enjoy plenty, is evidence that they don't understand or do not apply the law. So it's that, saying right there that we have abundance right at our fingertips, but the fact that we walk around thinking that we don't, right? We're constantly kind of limiting ourselves that, well, I don't have this or I don't have that. And really we do. And it's kind of evidence that we're not understanding what, the foundation of what this law of supply is talking about. So in the next paragraph, it goes into, it says there's a phase of the law known as demand and supply. And I know that, with talking with Cindy, she did a little bit of study on these two words of demand and supply. And I had to stop when I read this too, because I was like, don't they mean supply and demand? Because that's the way that we hear it, right? And so it made me kind of, stop and be like, wow, I wonder why he did that. But I think that, Cindy, you came up with some really interesting info when you did a little bit of study on these two words.
I think, the first thing that kind of hit me when I read the title of this chapter, the law of supply, I dug a little bit deeper, and I think I came up with a little bit more understanding when I say the law of abundance instead of the law of supply. So I kind of replaced that word abundance with supply. But I want to read a couple of definitions because I really wanted to know what these words meant. So the word demand means the desire to purchase coupled with the power to do so. the quantity of goods that buyers will take at a particular price, okay? And then we look at the word supply. To furnish or provide a person, establishment, or place with what is lacking or requisite. So to supply someone with clothing, to supply a community with electricity. The book goes into Thomas Edison and how, you know, it uses Thomas Edison as an example, and also uses the horse-drawn buggy and the transitioning into motor vehicles, and how, you know, back in the day when they were using horse and buggy, you know, we really didn't see that there was a potential for an automobile in the future, because the supply was already always there, but the demand was not being met. It wasn't seen. The people were blind to what they could actually create. So I think you know, those definitions kind of clarified it for me a little bit more. What do you think, Chris? I mean,
yeah, one of the things that stuck out to me, and it wasn't so much when I read it, but when I was listening to the Audible version, it kind of stuck out when I was listening to this demand and supply, was that, you know, in life, at least in my life, a lot of times I don't have a solution until I'm kind of forced into one, right? So it's like until I'm in like complete dire straits, I'll be like, well, I'm not sure what to do, or, you know, like, just, there's no solution to it. So it's like, I know what solutions are available, and I'll go through them and say, no, that won't work, that won't work, that won't work. But I can't come up with one that actually will work until it's like you hit that point where you have to make a decision. There's no more time left, or no more money left, or, you know, whatever the situation is, that it kind of forces you into, there has to be a solution. And then I typically find one, but sometimes it takes being kind of pushed to the brink to actually, you know, come up with something. And I thought of that when they were talking about like the buggy and the automobile, that it didn't occur to people for the longest time with the horse and the buggy, like, that there could be another way, because that was just what they had, right? Until there was a demand for something better. And so the idea is always there. And I know, I don't know exactly where it is in the book, but I remember hearing where, you know, Hallowell said that an invention, like, there's always an idea that comes over us first before we kind of move on to that next big invention. So it's always there. It's just a matter of like, what's the thing that's going to spark that particular idea. Any feedback from any of you ladies on demand and supply? Negative. All right.
yeah, I'll read what Belinda mentioned too about demand and supply. Demand is the visualization, the desire, the belief in something better yet seen. Supply naturally fills in. Once we visualize it, supply actually will come in and fill that. But that's why we revert, you know, I think in this book they reverse demand and supply, because we need to look at demand first, kind of like we need to look at believing and seeing, kind of look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue into, let me find it in this other book. Secret of the Law. So at the top, you guys, the top of page 48, where it reads, the secret of the law lies in one's consciousness. A man's life consists not in the abundance of the things he possesses, but in the consciousness of that which he has. And I want to turn this over to Cindy. But one of the things that Cindy mentioned earlier today when we were talking is there's a lot of seeing in this chapter. I mean, there's the talk about like believing first and seeing is believing. But this whole idea of consciousness, you know, we all have what he refers to as a mind's eye, right? Like there's something in our mind that's like an eye, that we see certain things. That really is this consciousness that he's talking about. So I thought that was really interesting that, you know, Cindy, that you brought that up, just kind of this idea of what we see and how we perceive things. And so if you wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about, it kind of goes into a great story and analogy that kind of has to do with this, the way that we perceive and look at things.
So I'm sure all of you guys kind of enjoyed this story about the farmer, right? I mean, it was, how many times in life does this happen? Or, can it happen, and has it happened? Man possesses the whole world and all of its wealth, yet is only able to enjoy what his own consciousness permits him to discern, right? So this farmer, he works and works and works so hard on this farm, and it's many acres, and what he sees is right in front of him every single day. Yet these two surveyors come and actually survey his property and notice, as they're going through his property, this body of water, and it has this sludge on top of it that just looks horrible. The cows don't want anything to do with it. The farmer certainly doesn't understand what that is or what's going on. And come to find out, that was evidence that there was oil on his property. And they obviously, the story tells us that they offered him a very good price, and he couldn't believe it. He's like, what in the world are these guys wanting to pay me all of this money for this land? He sells the land, moves to Canada, lives with his brother, starts all over again with the money that he was paid. And these guys, turn a somewhat worthless piece of property into $1 million oil business, and the farmer remains poor, and he worked hard, but the farmer only saw what the farmer allowed himself to see. He didn't have his eyes wide open. He didn't pay attention to the awareness. He wasn't curious. And it's kind of a sad story, really. But it's also, it also helps us, in today's life. I mean, be aware, just because you don't think that there's anything out there, pay attention, be curious. Because you never know what might be around the next turn if you just keep your eyes open and look. Be curious. So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to read, nature had supplied an abundance for the man, but he could realize only a scanty portion. He could see the farm only as acres, stones, and dirt. The law is not at fault, but the man is at fault because, he just remained poor, and he lived meagerly. He was limited.
Yeah, so I wanted to bring Kathleen into the conversation based on that message about, growing up around Amish communities, because I just privately messaged her back and said I did too. I grew up in Ohio around a lot of Amish as well. And so I just wondered, kind of what stuck out to me there where we were talking about, buggies and versus automobiles, and what's available to us, and then choices that we make. Was there something specific that kind of struck you with that analogy that they used?
Well, it's just kind of interesting that they have the means to, purchase automobile, but they don't. And it's a surprise to me that they don't want to upgrade to how we live, and they want to stay living that way when, it's just different to me. And they're all around, and I see it every day how they live, and they could live like us, but they choose not to. And
yeah, and I think too that the likelihood that idea of the automobile would come to someone that was, in the Amish community is probably not nearly as high, right? Because they wouldn't be looking for that. I mean, there is no solution that they would be seeking as far as, rather than this buggy, maybe we do something else. I mean, they're proving, even though it's there, we're choosing not to do that. So, that, kind of came to mind for me, that there are certain areas that we're just kind of in a box, right? Like whether we choose to be or whether it's, you know, subconscious, whatever it is, that we're not able to see what all the possibilities are, because we don't open up our consciousness to do that. So I thought that was a great lesson, but thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thanks.
Donna?
That is on, it's like we're putting material things as the supply, whereas putting the material things aside, that's not really what we're after as our supply. We want to be whole, our whole soul to be filled.
Right.
And to me, that is the supply. We live around a lot of Mennonites here who still have the comforts that we enjoy, but because of their religion practice, not as much as we do. I don't know, that doesn't make sense. But anyway, their supply is not the material things, because believe me, they've got the money in their pockets. If they go to the hospital or something like that, they pay their bills up front with cash.
Right.
So, you know, so to me, the supply that we're after is inner supply to fill up.
I like that. I like that. That's going to come in handy when we talk about money in a little bit, just when we touch on that.
Right.
So keep that thought.
Thanks.
Yeah, it is. It's perfect. So, you know, he even says that the middle of 49, the thing that we dare not do is to fret and worry about our supply or about where the next dollar is coming from. Fretting and worry tend to restrict and limit the supply at hand. So the worst thing that we can do is to sit around and be stressed out and worried about like where, you know, how we're going to make ends meet, or, you know, how we're actually going to get from point A to point B, because that is basically going to hinder any, you know, all of this goodness and abundance that's out there at our disposal. So it's, you know, it was interesting that was like the worst thing that you can do is sit around and worry and fret about it. So then he kind of goes into a couple of different analogies where he talks about the magnet, and then a little bit later about the bee that kind of is like doing, you know, half duty of the other bees. But we started talking here about this topic of money, and I want to go really quick to
so page 50,
is that where
the top paragraph, I think you were going to read, it is not the vocation that determines riches, but the demands. Or we passed that?
Yeah, no, mine has a sorry guys.
It's okay.
Okay, as we're able to think and to realize, that's where I'm trying to find, but I'm not there in the other book. The paragraph starts with, there are poor engineers.
Yes, that's right.
What page is that on for you?
Page 49 at the very bottom.
That's right.
Oh, there it is. The very last. Okay. I thought I've got like a new, it kind of separates that as a new paragraph. Sorry.
It does, yeah.
For a new paragraph. Okay. So very, very bottom of page 49, there are poor engineers and rich farmers. It is not the vocation that determines riches, but the demands we make of our vocations that determine riches. As we're able to think and to realize more abundance out of what we already have, we shall not only expand our thinking, but receive more abundantly. This is the basic principle of the law. You guys, just for background, again, I am not at all trying to turn this into a Bible study, but these are just things that popped up for me because I have some background in having gone to seminary, so like some different things that are popping up. But one that I actually have on my vision board is a scripture that talks about the wedding at, I think it was at Canaan, like where Jesus turned water into wine. So you probably, are familiar, at least with the general concept of how, they were at this wedding, and like the worst possible thing that could happen is to run out of wine for the guests. Like it's an embarrassment. It's this awful, shameful thing that would happen. And this, stress that came up of, we're running out. And so the scripture is, where Jesus had said, go fill the pots with water, which was basically a lesson of use what you have, and then, God will bless what you have with abundance. And so this kind of, came up for me when I was reading that part about, as we're able to think and to realize abundance out of what we already have, we shall not only expand our thinking, but receive more abundantly. So, it's easy, I think, for us to fall into habits of, woe is me, or like not appreciating what we have in our lives, and always, feeling like we don't have what the next guy has. But to have that appreciation for what we already have is what really, propels that abundance to come on, because we're not sitting around, worrying or wishing all the time. Like, we're grateful of what we already have. And, Cindy, I know that you talked a little bit about that as well, as kind of going through that process of, wow, like I, at least, me personally, could do a much better job of being appreciative over the abundance that I already have, that I may not think of it as abundance in the moment, compared to the abundance that I would like to have. But truly, the being grateful and appreciative over, what I already have in my life is I think one way that he's, kind of urging us to think about that really brings on abundance, to the much greater degree. So Cindy, I don't know if you want to touch on what that meant to you, or if you want to move on, up to you.
It's one of the things as my husband and I, really focus on this Isagenix business. It's been, a real challenge to, for me, and I'm speaking for myself, is, I'm very thankful for everything that I have. I feel as if my life has been blessed. I feel like it is abundant. So, I'm not really sure what point I'm trying to make here, other than just to say that I think it's okay. I think you're right, Chris, that if we are very thankful for what the things that we do have, then we can see that we deserve, or that we can be more abundant. But I don't know, when it comes to taking action, if you're really satisfied with where you are, it's hard to find that next step to get going, to find that motivation. So it's good to be thankful, but it's also to be a little bit uncomfortable too, I guess.
Yeah. Anything from you guys on that? Abundance? No? Okay, so let's keep on going. So he starts talking about this idea of the magnet, and how, the charge works with a magnet, that's going to basically draw in the same type of charge from another magnet. So again, it's kind of toward the middle of page 50, where it starts the sentence, likewise, the mind magnet of a person can be stimulated to a strong force of attraction if it is possible to get help from one who already has a full understanding of the law and can give him a good start. And so one of the topics that I think all three, between Belinda and Cindy and myself, we talked about this idea of the magnet and learning. So how do we get ourselves into a better position to start being able to see this abundance, right? To see this law of supply that everything that is good that's at our disposal, the law is telling us that it's there and that we should change our thoughts around it. But what's how? Like, how do you actually do that? And here, I feel like this analogy was really more of instruction for us that talks about, we need to seek out somebody who already has a full understanding of the law. Moving down a little further, he says, I always advocate that it's better to get a good start when possible by getting help, rather than to come over the slower and more arduous path of self-education. And so, we kind of slowed down there and said, what is he really talking about there as far as, we could sit back and say, well, let's figure this out, right? I know that here's what the law is telling me to do, so let me figure out a whole plan on, how I'm going to get better about doing that. And what Hallowell is saying is that, he always advocates that it's better to go find somebody that's already done it, that's already been successful at it, already knows the law, because the learning is going to be so much faster than trying to do it on your own. Cindy, do you have anything on that?
I think that's really good. I think we should humble ourselves to ask for help and to seek out those people who actually do have the knowledge. And for me, when I wanted to learn how to do yoga or meditate, I sought out someone who was already practicing the art of energy and how to focus the mind. And it didn't make me any less of a person to ask for that help or to seek it out. It actually helped me to focus my practice, and we can all relate this to so many places in our lives, I think.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely can. And I think it's a good thing for us to think about when I know I'm guilty of when there's a new concept or something that I'm learning, I can be aware that that's something that I need to work on and even say, this is something that I'm working on. But I'm really not. I mean, I'm not taking action. I'm not doing anything differently around that. And I love this instruction from him of like, go seek out somebody that's been there, done that, right? That knows how to do it. So I'm again trying to find the place in the book where, because mine, it looks like it almost starts a new chapter. Position. The sentence starts, our mental magnet. I need a little bit of help following.
Yeah, give me a sec. Are we still, we're going to still continue with the magnet?
Well, yeah, it kind of goes on to.
Oh, here we go. Okay, the bottom of page 51, halfway through the last paragraph, section 167.
Thank you. So, our mental magnet is greatly reduced in strength by our worries and fears, and our inflow of good is slowly closed off. If our mental force becomes too weak, we may even repel what little good that is trying to reach us. As we can charge a magnet with electric energy to build up its power, so can our mind be charged with a mental energy that builds up a power of attraction. So it's, kind of continuing on with this idea about the magnet, but that power of attraction and that, that we have, to others can be greatly reduced if, we're sitting around, closed off or worried about it, fearful, about not receiving, that attraction. So I think it kind of goes back to, again, our consciousness, right? But how are we organizing and arranging our thoughts around, this idea of attraction, like attracts like. And so then he goes into another analogy about some bees. And so Cindy, you were going to chat a little bit about the bees and how that relates to our perception of supply.
Yeah, so you guys all know the story of the bees. Did you read that part? Page 52. So if we look at I love this analogy because it kind of sums up everything for us. Like nature, to accomplish good, our thoughts must always be building upward, must be constructive. If, for example, a drone bee in a hive has decided to lie down on its brothers and only do a half job, does Mother Nature agree and find a part-time work for the special bee? No, she does not. She impresses the other bees who are working hard to collect the honey and fill the hive to send their soldiers after the drone. It is politely marched outside and stung to death. Nature destroys a lazy bee. Wow. I mean, that's pretty awesome. So then how do we apply that to ourselves? And he goes on to tell us that we too, like the hive and like the bees, we also need to purge our minds and really do an inventory of what are we thinking? What are we focusing on? And like those bees, you know, we have to destroy those negative drones or those drone thoughts. So the definition of thought is an idea, plan, opinion, picture that is formed in our mind, something that you think, the act of carefully thinking about the details of something. So that's the definition of thought. So how do we then monitor those? How do we go in and purge those, take an inventory as he explains to us to do? And I think one of the things that we can do is we can get an idea of our thoughts by listening to what we actually say. I was talking to a friend over the weekend, and I realized throughout the day, he spent the night here with us, and I realized throughout the day that I had said the word scared about 4 times throughout the day. And it hit me as I said it a 4th time. I kind of shuddered and stopped. And like, oh, that's been a repetitive theme in my life today. And so I acknowledged it. And then I kind of put it aside and I thought about it later. And I realized that I was putting that fear into my own life because I kept saying it over and over. And it was completely baseless. I wasn't really afraid. I was just putting that out there. So be aware of what you're saying to your children, to your spouse, to your friends, over the phone, gossip. I think we just need to really just listen to ourselves sometimes and take time to find those patterns that we get into that we don't want to have in our life anymore. We have the power to change that. We just need to acknowledge it. How about you, Chris? Do you have anything to say about that? Anything to add?
Not
Or
on
does
that.
anyone else?
Yeah. What about you guys?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, hi. I know this is kind of faith-based, but not really in depth. But I was going through a time with some physical discomfort, and one of my mentors at work, she kept repeating these things. She was like, my faith is by hearing, my faith is by hearing. And I know she's really spiritual. I'd never heard where that had come from before. So I looked into that story, if any of you all are familiar with it. And I took a step back, and my husband says it all the time. He works long hours, and he says, I'm tired all the time. He'll wake up and say, I'm tired. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do the same thing. I wake up tired. I wake up hurting. And so I said, well, I'm going to try this. I'm going to go work on this self-healing that people who have these abundant lives talk about. And I said, I'm just going to start it for a week. And whenever I felt those words wanting to come out of my lips, I would just stop it, and if somebody asked me, I'm feeling great. And it sounds crazy, but that really started to change things for me physically. Physically, when I was no longer hearing that I was tired or telling myself that I was tired, somewhere in me, there was this source of energy that I was able to tap into and keep going to do things that I thought I couldn't do. And I think that's really huge in the grander scheme of believing that, building that belief in yourself and the lifestyle that you want and the person that you want to be. because our minds are so strong, and really they'll do whatever we say, you know. So if you're not hearing it, if you're not saying it and repeating it over and over again, you're not going to have that kind of physiological effect and that mental effect.
Mm-hmm. Well, our brains are very powerful organs, and it really is amazing sometimes how the brain will make us feel things that really we can change if we just focus on something else. Donna, Myra, Kathleen, do you guys have anything to add about how you actually, you know, inventory your thoughts, or any suggestions for us that we haven't covered? All right.
No. Well, I think it's a perfect segue for this analogy that he gives in the story he tells about the guy with the coat. As far as, you know, kind of what, you know, bringing into fruition what we think about. So, you know, the guy who was concerned about getting the job, and it's like, do I, you know, didn't have very much money, do I go buy this coat? You know, that's gonna, you know, kind of assuming that I'm gonna need it once I get this job, or, you know, do I leave the money where it is as a, you know, kind of just in case? And it's like that that safety net, you know, more of a mentality. But I want to just start there. It's the middle of 56. That's kind of, I think it's the end of the story, but it says the coat served to enable him to feel prosperous, and the venture strengthened his courage and confidence. So the law proceeded to satisfy the demand. And so that, to me, it just sounds so simple to do, right? Like, how often are we kind of weighing, you know, well, it could go this way or it could go that way, and which way, you know, do I choose to, you know, kind of accept? Basically, if I think about it as, I'm going to go get that coat because that job is mine, you know, is very different. And then it says, you know, the law is going to proceed to satisfy that demand, you know, versus me sitting back, I don't know, I, you know, need the money for something else. So I think just if we truly are believing, you know, what this law of demand and supply is telling us, you know, there's a lot of action that really we can, you know, kind of put to the test when those types of situations come along. I mean, they do every day, right? So to have that boldness, it goes back to, again, the idea of faith and being able to see something even though it's not there. Like, we're believing it, you know, by, you know, just by not, we don't have anything to see that it's actually going to work out, that he's going to get that job, that he's saying, you know, I've got faith it's going to happen. And then the law responds. Any comments on that story about the coat? No?
Can I come in again?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I have tried to be really money conscious lately because I'm separating from the military, so that some of my income is going to be going. And I found these blue suede shoes at Sperry, and they are just too cute, and I had to get them, and I love them, and people bring them up every time I wear them, and I've only had them for like 4 days. And I said, you know, it's okay. I always say, you know, God will provide. You know, I needed some shoes. I never spend that much money on myself. And I have good feelings about this week. And, well, you know, it's Monday. It's payday. And I came into a little windfall that totally took care of my shoes.
There you go.
But the emotional feeling that I got out of it, especially how I've been feeling lately being pregnant and kind of not myself, it just, I feel like it gave me that boost, you know, to talk to people, to get them to kind of help me out with that income that I'm trying to build. And I will always be a believer in that. And so I love that coat story because it really does. It makes a difference how you feel about yourself, changes how you talk to people, and that can change so many outcomes just right there.
And I think that it's such a great example because it's not like your focus is not on the money, right? The focus was on the belief that it was going to be taken care of. Like the shoes, like my focus is not this money, money, money. It's that I believe that the law is going to respond accordingly, right? And then it does. So
Yes.
I mean, it's perfect that when we talked about, how, guys, I'm so sorry, I should have done a better job at this, like where it says, remember not to confuse money with supply. That money is just a means of supply. And it says money isn't the root of evil, but the love of money is, which kind of started a conversation between Belinda and Cindy and I a few days ago about this focus that we tend to have on money and our jobs and our careers, and that it is about like, I really need more money to do X, Y, Z. And then, it really led us to start questioning, well, what is the money actually for? What will it bring to our lives? As far as desires are concerned, it's really not about like the money. It's about what it actually provides for us.
Right.
Cindy,
Absolutely.
did you have some comments on that when we were talking earlier about money?
Yeah, I mean, like the verse says, it's the love of money that's the sin, not money, right? So if we can humble ourselves to the point where, I want to read page 57 at the top, first paragraph. It follows, therefore, that you can steadily draw into your life any and every form of good that you may truly desire, as it is the will of God that you should enjoy every good and will promote happiness and progress. All desire is an expression of the will, while to expect good is to demand good, so that both are necessary to attract supply. Seek to adjust your desire with God's plan, the law, and it come. I really like that a lot, because I think we all really do want good. And I think, Donna, you were talking about that, is we really do. The supply that we seek is the good, is the abundance, is the feeling that we get, when we're able to purchase. For instance, this was something where this is a lesson that I learned because Belinda talked me through it. Like, let's say I wanted a boat. I wanted to be out on a boat, and it's not necessarily bad for me to want the boat, but it's really the feeling that I get of being on the boat, having my friends on the boat, being able to pull them with, on their skis, being able to have a cocktail, have lunch on the boat. It's the feeling, not the money, that we're striving for, right? So whether we want to go to India and do a pilgrimage there and be around the culture, or whether we want to donate money to our favorite charity and feel the blessing that comes from being able to give that money to the less fortunate. Money allows us to do that. So money in itself isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And you guys know we're coming up on time, but one of the things that we kind of had a good time talking about earlier is if we go a little bit right before that paragraph, when it says, when I desire to work for prosperity for myself or for others, I try to stay in an environment where there's plenty and beauty, and where the people around me are not in limited straits. And I told the story about how I was talking to a friend of mine after NYKO. And she was asking me, she knew about Isagenix and knew that I was going. And she asked me how it was, did you have a good time? And I said, yeah. And I said, I was so stressed out before I went because my particular situation, I didn't have a job. I just knew I didn't have the money to go. And Lindsay just said, you have to go. Like, there's no doubt, you have to go. Just get yourself there. Like, we'll figure it out. And I've never done that before in my life. Just gone someplace to take that kind of chance. Well, what if I get there and somebody doesn't have money for me to eat, or I don't have money for the hotel, and like, you know, that embarrassment and like what's going to happen. And so rather than getting wrapped up in that, she was like, just go, like, just do it. And so I was telling this story to a friend of mine who said, you know what, the exact same thing happened to me. She went on a trip and said, you know, I knew that I wasn't going to have the means to go, but when she got there, she ran into this guy who she hadn't seen or talked to in a long time. And he saw her and said, was so happy to see her and glad that she was there at this event, that he said, hey, where are you staying? And she said, you know what, I actually don't know. You know, I kind of stepped out on faith to come on this trip. And, you know, so I'm here, but I don't really know what's going to happen next. And then sure enough, he went and ended up paying for her room for the entire rest of the time, and said that, you know, the fact that she was there and saw her was all he needed, and that she had no worries. And so the rest of the trip, she was able to just enjoy the reason why she went there in the first place, right? Like it wasn't about the money. It was about being in line with, you know, like Hollowell says, as long as it's in line with God's will and God's plan, just do it. It's that faith. You might not be able to see how it's going to work out. She had no idea that she was going to see this guy. And then boom, there he is, you know. So, you know, going back to that idea, it's not our job to figure out how it's going to happen. We just need to go, step out on faith and do it.
Love that.
So I know we're coming up on time. Does anybody have any final comments? I know there was so much in this chapter that we kind of wanted to get through, and hopefully we touched on something that was important, or that was a blessing to you guys. Does anybody have any kind of final comments to wrap up?
I just want to say thanks. It was great, and I've enjoyed it.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
When you're asked to serve, you serve.
That's right. That's right.
I hope you do a good job.
So I'll just finish up then with the reading of the poem at the end of the chapter, because I think that's a good way to end for tonight. I hope you guys have a great week, okay? The Promised Land. No more shall I look to the far skies for my Father's loving aid, since here upon earth his treasure lies, and here is his kingdom laid. No more through the midst of things unknown I'll search for the Promised Land. For time is the footstool of his throne, and I am within his hand. The wealth that is more than finest gold is here, if I shall but ask. And wisdom unguessed and power untold are here for every task. The gates of heaven are before my eyes, their key is within my hand. No more shall I look to the far skies, for here is the Promised Land.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
You.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We'll just say bye.